Good afternoon. This is a photograph of a grantor, the first page of a Grantor Trust um, that is a centerpiece of my own personal finances. And I wanted to talk about that today, um, with respect to what my situation is, and my books, web activity, and the possible interest in making film from my books, which has been going on in various ways for some time now. So I just wanted to describe today my own particular financial situation and how I manage it, and some of the legal requirements might be on me. Um, and just show a couple other little pictures that an aunt passed away in Ohio in October 2010 and left some money. This was at my mother's burial in Arlington, Virginia, on December 21st in 2010, 2 months later. So that's the minister speaking, and that's a picture of the hospice where she passed away December 14, 2010. She was there for about 4 days. And that happens to be the same building that I went to elementary school in, with Woodlawn Elementary School, and I had grades 1 through 6 there when I was a boy. Um, so let me just run through the fine points, and I actually made just a list of a few of them. Um, the structure of my trust. First of all, the first trust was actually hers and was drawn up on July 4th, 2009. It was about 18 months before her passing. And one of the benefits is that distribution can happen as long as it's validated without probate. So a distribution becomes very simple when the person passes away. But what I have is a combined account system at Wells Fargo, and I also have accounts at Bank of America, which is where I actually do my day-to-day bill paying, and UBS has another checking account. But my financial system is set up in three components. The Margaret Boushka Trust, Margaret was my mother's name, um, which has about eight, I would say about 870,000 approximately assets in it right now. Consists of a checking account I pay certain expenses from, and it has two different annuities, and it works with two banks, Wells Fargo and then Truist, which used to be SunTrust, and it actually is the legal owner of the condo that I live in, that you can see the walls from in my picture right here. Um, then there is a trust in my name, which was drawn up with the Grantor Trust that was set up on February 2012. Um, there's a trust in my name, and then which was set at the time, had about 200,000 in it. Right now it has about 100,000, less than 100,000 in it. I'll explain why later. And then I have accounts in my own name, and which I can spend just as an ordinary individual out of checking accounts. And the spending power that I have can easily put my hands on very quickly. If you say is around 245,000 right now. If you take out bills that are due soon, and if you take out an annuity that actually pays me some income, and then also take into consideration another annuity that I pay back to Margaret Boushka's trust as a kind of rent for living in the condo, from which from which some automated charitable contributions go out. Because there's about 450,000 to start with. 432 it says here. But what's left that I can easily get my hands on if I need it is around a little under 250,000 right now. And that's down quite a bit from what it used to be when I originally got the trust. The money was distributed 9 months after my mother's passing. And that's to allow enough time if there were any outstanding bills that were owed. We actually spent $83,000 or something like that on her care in the last year of her life, for example. It's quite a bit of nursing care and so forth. And so it's basically those three piece parts. And then there are certain uses of the trust that are legitimate, that this money belongs to the beneficiaries, and there are 5 beneficiaries. I can use it for expenses related to the condo, including taxes, condo fees, your monthly dues, and repairs to, appliances or heating or air conditioning, for copays for my health insurance attached to my Medicare and dental. I had, at one time I'm actually going to show it. I had implants put in 2013, and that was kind of an experience in two different all-day sessions at an oral surgeon. And any other business investments would require approval from what they call the committee of beneficiaries, who are the other beneficiaries besides me. And one is an individual, a relative. Another one passed away, who would have been the successor trustee when something happens to me. But one of them is an individual, a relative, and then the others are nonprofits. Now, risky, but riskier personal, ordinary investments in stocks and mutual funds, I can do without question, but riskier investments like supporting my own self-publishing activity online, or trying to make a movie, would require approval from the committee of beneficiaries, for example, in some formal way, because it's not really my money, it's theirs. Now, there's something to this, and that I think is worthy of talking about. The other use of Margaret, my mother's portion, is long-term care life insurance policy for me in case anything were to happen and I were to wind up in a long-term care facility. One of the reasons that the laws for how people use money that is in trust are fairly strict. They are controlled by the state. In this case, it's Virginia. It's not the federal government. They are controlled by the state. One of the reasons that it's fairly strict is to make sure there's enough money to take care of long-term care if I were to ever wind up, or anyone who inherits money were to wind up in a nursing home. And we all know that that's extremely expensive, particularly when you don't have any relatives left to could really take care of you or anything. That's the primary reason. But the end result of that kind of policy is a lot of money, in this case around $800,000 or so, remains frozen and no one can really use it. There is a provision that any nonprofit beneficiary can take out 1% of that value per year, which would be 8,000 out of 800,000, for educational or medical purposes for one of their clients, but that's never been used. Now, what I think the law ought to do is allow something like any beneficiary can use up to 1 let's say the beneficiaries are, you add up the beneficiaries and they can use, say, 5% of the beneficiary share, the irrevocable part a year. That would mean that in 10 years, that part of if you do the math, the formulas you learn in algebra class, if you do the math, it would lose about 15% of its value in 10 years. It would still be preserved reasonably well, but that would mean that some of the nonprofits could use the money that was inherited all the time for some of their projects. I think that would be socially better than the way we're doing it now. And I'm a little surprised that it's managed that way, although maybe I'm not so surprised. Inherited wealth used to be a real political football. But I can remember the People's Party of New Jersey back in the early 1970s wanted to get rid of all inherited wealth, and now you hear, well, of course, communism and Marxism wants to get rid of all private property. But most of the far left today is trying to protect marginalized groups, define marginalized groups, and then protect people by their association of marginalized groups, and by changing names and changing vocabulary that gets into gender identity and also critical race theory, wanting to protect or people or to penalize people simply because they belong to an oppressor or oppressed group, and not because of their own individual behavior. We could have a system that gives everybody a social credit score that would sound like China, put it on the blockchain, and then you could allow people, particularly to be active online or something based on their individual social credibility, instead of doing what the left does now. That's something that you could try to do. Let me just talk about my own health. It's generally been good. I'm 81 years old. Born in July. It was a sign of cancer, for what that's meant word if you're an astrologer. And blood pressure, I take Losartan. I take a couple of blood pressure medicines. I've had some other minor problems, but no major problems. I had a fractured shoulder and an accident hiking in 2021, and then I had a hip fracture in 1998. And I had teeth, placed in 2013, but generally it's been pretty good. One of the things, though, that I would have to be careful about with my activity, particularly now, I'm trying to possibly produce a movie, would be, I don't want to lose my right to drive, for example, my mobility. If I had any kind of incident, stroke or anything like that, suddenly, even a minor one, I'd lose the right in my mobility to transport myself around. So you don't want any bad news from a doctor. You don't know when you go to the doctor you're going to find something that prohibits you from continuing some of your activity. And that's something I'm starting to be more concerned about, because it could happen to anybody. One of the things that's also very noticed, a couple of things. One of the things that's very striking about this is I have self-published a lot, and I don't have Patreon. I don't ask for it because I have inherited wealth to manage, and I don't know if I'd be allowed to or not, but I don't ask for donations. The only thing I've charged for is when you buy books, either through Kindle or NOLA or the Barnes and Noble. I forget the name of what their product is. It begins with an N. Either that or you buy paperback or hard copy. I get a royalty, but not that much. That's the only real income I get. So a lot of this is being done It's Nook. It's called Nook, the Barnes and Noble thing. So a lot of this is being done essentially free, and that's I am sort of acting as a journalist, but I'm kind of competing with people who have to do it for a living. And so I could be perceived as undermining other people's jobs. And that particularly might be true with trying to make a movie with the politics of, the recent strike in Hollywood and the unions and all of that kind of thing. I've never actually belonged to a union. When I was a computer programmer, we were just on our own. We were salaried and we weren't part of that world. So I'm used to being very independent. So I've never been part of this collective solidarity kind of thing, which is real important. But then that kind of puts you in a position of competing, maybe undermining other people's having jobs. And that's since about 2017 or so, that's become a more serious problem that could undermine the things I'm allowed to do online. I've become more sensitive about it, and I've cut back a lot of my online activity, particularly starting in 2022, as I've explained at other times. One of the beneficiaries, I'm not going to give the name here, but there is a problem with over the fact that they support a particular position with respect to gender ideology for minors. And I have a real problem with that. Anything that involves with minors and with anything where the science is, where the beliefs are contested and where you're depending on a purported idea that seems to be nebulous and seems to be circular in its definition. And it's kind of gotten into our legal system through the back door. The idea of gender identity as something that someone can self-identify without any question. I think that's causing a great deal of difficulty. And so I'm having difficulty with one, but it's not easy to eliminate a beneficiary. So I'll just say that. That's kind of what I wanted to say today. I'll probably write this up on my blog on a page just for the factual information. I do send letters once a year to each beneficiary. I'm supposed to do that, usually in March, stating what's going on. But I just wanted everybody to know that today. And I do thank you for listening.